Hello, and welcome to episode number 42 of the Creative Mojo podcast. My name is Joanne, and I am the host, and I am coming to you today, as always, from my home in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And a warm welcome to all returning viewers, and a special hello to any new viewers who might be checking out the podcast for the first time. I'm delighted that you've chosen to spend a little bit of time with me. I hope you'll enjoy what you see, and that you'll consider subscribing to the podcast and joining our Ravelry group, which is Creative Mojo, which could be found by searching the Groups tab on Ravelry. And it's where we do knit-alongs and where I post show notes and stuff like that. Although I do apologize, I've been really bad and haven't posted show notes in the last two episodes. Just been busy, and that's not really a good excuse, but it is what it is. But I'm going to do my best to get show notes up for this episode, and most of my projects and things I work on and things I show go over a number of episodes. So if you can't find information about something in one particular, if I didn't put up show notes for the last episode, they'll probably be repeats in this one, for example, and you should be able to find the information by looking into some of my previous episode show notes, which again can all be found on Ravelry. So that's, I think, that's all the administrative biz. I'm recording on Sunday, November 19th, I believe it is. It's the 19th or the 20th. I can't remember which. Bad me. And it's a little bit later in the day. It's close to 5 o'clock. And it's a kind of gray, and it's warm out today. It's Chinooking here, which means we have a warm weather front coming in and melting all the snow that we got in the last 10 days or so. And we had quite a lot of it. But it is kind of gray and gloomy a bit out. Plus, it's that time of day that we're starting to lose the light. So I'm trying something a little different. I'm back in the spot that I was podcasting in back towards the summer, and I've hooked up a couple of lights to give it a little more directional light. I hope the quality of this is going to be okay. We'll see how it goes, right? But I have quite a lot to show you. It's been about 3 weeks since I recorded last, and I've been working on quite a lot of projects. So I'm just going to get right into it and show you. I've got some finished objects, and I've got lots of whips. They're all around me here. So yeah, let me start with what I have finished. And actually, a little preamble to that. Part of the reason why I have so many finished objects and whips sitting around me is, in my last episode, I talked about how I had been sort of negligent and hadn't started my Christmas knitting. I normally begin my knitting for Christmas in like August or September. Excuse me. I have a relatively large family, and they're all super appreciative of hand knit objects, which is really nice. It's nice to have a family that are not only knit worthy, but so appreciative whenever I make them stuff. But over the years, they've all kind of come to expect hand knit Christmas gifts, and they are kind of disappointed if they don't get them. And that generally means a fair amount of Christmas knitting. I'm usually knitting for about 6 to 8 people at least for Christmas. So, and I hadn't started this year in the fall like I normally do, and I got to end of October, and I thought, oh gosh, what am I going to do? I was starting to think I was going to have to give gifts to people that weren't hand knitted gifts. And then I remembered, and I thought, this is the advantage to being what the grocery girls call a slutty knitter, a non-monogamous knitter. Monogamous knitter being someone who knits on one project at a time, which I'm definitely not. I would be firmly in the polygamous knitter, which is maybe a slightly nicer way of calling it than a slutty knitter. The polygamous knitter category, where I tend to cast on lots of things and have lots of projects, and some I'll kind of bear down on and get finished off right away, and some will languish for quite a long time. Sometimes they get put down or put aside, and then for all kinds of different reasons, I don't pick them up again for a while. In particular with socks, I tend to be bad that way, and I invariably have half finished socks, like socks with one sock finished or one sock almost finished, or something like that. And I remembered that, and I thought, oh, I should go downstairs to my craft room and dig around in the bag that is full of half knit pairs of socks and see what's in there and see if I can't turn some of those into Christmas presents. And lo and behold, I had quite a few, and they were kind of in the perfect place because they were, one sock was finished and the second sock was cast on, and there was, in most cases, a little bit like just start of the cuff. But it was a great place to sort of pick up and start from on the second sock. And so that has really helped me kind of get back to a place where I feel like most of my family anyway can get their hand knitted Christmas items, which was excellent. So that's why I have quite a few finished objects. Let me show you. So the first thing I finished was, these are my November or October socks. October socks, yes, that I showed her. They were almost done in the last episode that I recorded. I started these the beginning of October, and they will they went into the Grocery Girls year-long knit a pair of socks a month Cal, and I have finished them. I finished them shortly after I recorded the last time. You can see it's funny how they kind of pooled differently, the two different socks, but I don't mind that. They're just a bit different on the leg there, but that doesn't bother me at all. I really like these socks. They're just vanilla socks. They are for me. I knit them out of what I use, Black Cat custom yarns, which is yarn that I bought at Knit City in Vancouver back at the end of September. And I knit they're this beautiful color called Chocomint, and I knit them for also for the Cal for Pin Feathers and Pearls for Candace's podcast, Pin Feathers and Pearls. And she had a mint along, and I haven't posted these yet. I got to get that done because I think end of November was the due date for these. But really nice yarn. This Black Cat custom fiber, she's out of Kimberley, BC, and it's a really nice bouncy squishy kind of base. I really like it, and very, very pretty color. I have a couple of other skeins of this yarn as well that I picked up, and I look forward to working with it again. This was my absolutely standard vanilla pattern, 64 stitches from the cuff down. I used a little gray mini from Seawall Fibers for the cuffs and the toes on both socks, but not the heels. And I just did a slip stitch heel, and yeah, so that's my finished object number one. And then I have two other pairs of socks. Now both of these ones, you may, if you've been a long time viewer of the podcast, you probably remember seeing these back in the spring. I think I showed these off probably last in May or June. I started them, I think, in May. They're the Apple Blossom socks by Helen Stewart, who's the Curious Handmaid, and they are knit out of a skein top draw sock. This is one of her club colorways when she had her yarn club, which she sadly doesn't have anymore. Out of the colorway Intergalactic, and I had knit one sock of this, and like I said, I had the, don't remember which was which, but I had a little bit of I had about that much of the cuff started, and I picked these up and went, oh, I can finish these. They're a very easy little pattern. I think it's a 5 or 6 row repeat, but it's mostly just ribbing with about the 6th row you do this little stitch that you slip and pull over the other stitches, but and that's it. And it easy to follow. I don't know why I stopped I think I stopped working on these because I started working on some other socks, but they're really pretty, and they're done, and they took me about a day and a half to whip out that second sock, which was the first of the socks that I picked up to work on for Christmas, and it made me feel like, oh, this is actually a possibility that I will get my Christmas knitting done after all. These are going to be for my sister. So I don't think I have anything else I need to tell you about those, other than, as I said, they're the Apple Blossom socks. I do highly recommend this as a fun pattern that's not too difficult. It's easily memorizable and pretty easy to knit up. They look funny. They look sort of skinny, long and skinny, but that's because of that ribbing, which really stretches out. So I finished those, and then the next socks I picked up and worked on was this lovely pair. This light is slightly distorting this color, making it a little bit more orange. It's actually a little bit more gold yellowy than they're appearing. That's close, but they look a little more orange on my camera than they actually are in real life. They're more of a golden yellowy orange. The color is called Saffron. The pattern is Callaway by Cookie A. I knit this sock in 2013, if you can believe it. I was working on these in the summer of 2013. I remember my husband and I were on a road trip in the car, and I got this first sock done, and then I just started the second sock and put them down and never picked them up again. So I was here where I put in this progress keeper on the second sock when I pulled these out of the bag. And again, I whipped off that second sock in about a day and a half, 2 days maybe. The yarn I used for these is Hazelknit's Artisan Sock in the color Saffron. And again, this is a fun pattern because, again, it's quite easy to follow and fairly easy to memorize. It's not a pattern you have to stay super glued to. It's cables and lace. You can see that cable that comes up through here and sort of ribbing, and then this is a lace pattern. But it's a pretty straightforward repeat, and I found these quite easy. Again, you don't have to stay glued to the pattern every row. You get it kind of, I got it pretty well committed into my head, and I just had to look at it from time to time to make sure I was doing the right thing. So it was easy to finish off that second sock. It's kind of sad that I let them languish for 4 years, somewhere in there, in a bag in my craft room. But they're done. These are going to be for my mother. I think she will, this is a great color for her. She loves these kind of vibrant colors. So that's 2 finished pairs of socks for Christmas gifts, plus the one for me. And the last finished object that I have is my sewing. I told you on the last episode that I had done another dress, the little pullover sort of dress from 100 Acts of Sewing, her dress number 1, and I showed you the fabric that I had cut out to make another one. It was flannel, and I finished it. Here it is, and I love it. It's the pockets in the front, and I think when I spoke about it on the last episode, I was a little worried about whether it was going to be, because of the flannel, to wear it with like leggings and stuff, whether it was going to stick too much to the leggings, how it would be without a lining or a slip or anything. It's fine. I've worn it twice with leggings and a long sleeve t-shirt, and no problem whatsoever. So I'm super happy. I think the flannel is just weighty enough that it helps it to stay where it should and not stick to my leggings. And it's warm and it looks really nice. It's very cozy and comfortable, but it looks quite pleasant. And I like on the last one, which I showed on the last episode, the denim one I did, I also used a commercial what do you call this? Binding. That's not the right word, but I used, as opposed to making my own, which the pattern suggests you do, but I just used a commercial, whatever you call this. I don't know why I can't remember. Anyway, and again, I improved even attaching it even more since the last one. I'm really pleased with how much I've improved on my sort of techniques, my sewing techniques with these few simple little projects. Like the other one, I did a lovely French seam, so all of the ends are all enclosed inside the French seam, which I think is good because flannel does tend to fray a bit, and that keeps that all enclosed nicely inside there. Yeah, so that's my other finished object, and I was super happy to get that done. And now I'm going to venture into the next thing I'll do is one of her top patterns, a shirt pattern that I have. So I'm going to give that a try next. And yeah, I'm really pleased that the denim one I've also worn a couple of times. So those are the things that I've finished since I spoke to you last. The larger pile is the things I've worked on. I've definitely kind of touched on a number of projects since I saw you last, and some of them are ones I've had on the needles for quite a while. 2 of them are new. So let's get into them. I have a bunch of socks. These are my, this is a pair of socks that I'm actually knitting. Well, I think these will be a Christmas present. I think these are going to be for my stepmother. These will also be my November socks for the Grocery Girls knit along. Those don't have to be from me to qualify for that. I'm loving how this variegated yarn is knitting up. It's really pretty. I tried these. I showed this yarn on another pair of socks that I started on. I think I've used this yarn once, maybe even twice on other patterns. I think twice on a pattern with on a sock with a pattern on it, and it's just a little too dark and variegated for it to really do justice to much of a pattern. So twice I think I've ripped this yarn out, and I decided that it really wanted to be a vanilla sock so that the yarn wasn't fighting with a pattern on it. They're coming along quite nicely. The yarn sadly isn't available anymore. I think she's stopped dyeing, which is unfortunate because I got a few skeins. It was a company called Sheep Paints, and she was a German dyer, and I really like this yarn. This particular base is called the Falky Feet, and it's British Falkland Merino and nylon. It's just a 75-25, but feels slightly different. It's a really interesting yarn in the fact that it's kind of a, what would I call it? It's sort of somewhere in between the super soft merino that we're kind of used to, that a lot of dyers use, and the more sturdy rustic wool that feels a little scratchier. This doesn't feel scratchy, but it's sturdier, but it still has a nice soft feel to it. It's an interesting, this base is an interesting yarn. So, and it held up really well to being frogged twice from a partially knit sock. So I'm just kind of zooming through. I just completed the gusset, the heel and gusset, and I'm just onto the foot now. And my stepmother has a bit longer feet than I do, so be a little bit longer journey down the leg, but I need to have these finished for sure by the end of November. So these are my work knitting, and I've done most of what you see here at work, which is great. We're in rehearsals now for a play that will go up in January, so I have quite a bit of rehearsal time. However, I did learn an important lesson yesterday. These have, as I almost always knit, a slip stitch heel. And I was at the slip stitch heel yesterday at work, and we've been, the new play that we're working on is, the company I work for is what they call creation based. So we're not working from an existing script. We always start from sort of scratch in the creation of a new play. And it's not your traditional sort of one person writes it and then you, and then the actors learn it and you perform it and someone directs it, but as a group, we come together and we do a prolonged sort of rehearsal workshop period. And usually we start with some material, but then everybody kind of contributes to that. And this particular play is called Moon, Moon, No Moon. And it's about man's fascination over history with the moon and all the different things the moon has been for us, a way that we tell, the way that early man could tell passage of time and length of distance of travel. You know, you would travel somewhere and it would be, oh, you walk for 3 moons to get to this place or whatever. And that it was how people knew when to plant crops and all those kinds of different things. Up to, you know, much more recent times with our exploring, a desire to go to the moon and the race to go to the moon and all those kinds of things. So we're exploring all those kinds of things as part of this play. And one of the things that we were doing the last couple of days was watching a number of documentaries in rehearsal as sort of research material that we were using to spur ideas, and then then we do, the cast does some writing and stuff like that. And it's great. We have a great setup for it in our we rehearse actually in our theater space, and we have a screen and a projector, and so we can hook up to that and watch the movies on a big screen in the room, which is really, really nice and comfortable. And it's pretty dark. So I was knitting these in the dark, which I do, you know, I knit it like when I go to the movie theater to movies and all kinds of things like that. But I had never tried knitting a heel flap in the dark before. And usually when I'm knitting in the dark, kind of what I'm doing is, it's easy when it's just around and around and around and it's all stuck and it's all knit stitch, right? And you just sort of feel with your fingers to know that you're in the right place or whatever. harder to do where, because with the heel flap, of course, you're going back and forth on one row. It's like knit one, slip one, knit one, slip one. And on the purl side, it's just slip one and then purl across, right? Not being able to see, and it was very dark where I was sitting in the theater. And I got about halfway through the heel flap, and then I could feel with my fingers, I couldn't see, but I could feel something was wrong. I could feel that I had dropped a stitch on the side, so I had to stop. Just kind of sad because it meant I had nothing more to knit on for the rest of the time we were watching that movie. But, and then when I got home and pulled it out of my bag and I looked, and sure enough, I had dropped an edge stitch, and I had to basically rip the heel flap out almost to the beginning and start over. So, important lesson learned, a heel flap is not something I can knit in the dark. But other than that, these are coming along, and I think a few more days of rehearsal, definitely these will be done in another day or two, and I just have to get that second sock on the needle so I can get them done by the end of November. So that's one of the things I've been working on. And then I have another vanilla sock that has also got some love. This is again a sock that I worked on for a bit. I think I had about that much of the leg, maybe from the cuff to about there. And then I think I originally thought I was knitting these for my husband, and I probably cast them on a year or so ago. I don't even remember exactly when I cast these on, but I would suspect it was kind of around a year ago. And like I said, I knit part of the leg, and then I got distracted by other things, and they went into a bag, and I forgot all about them, and this poor sock has sat in the bag ever since. And I thought, oh, well, there you go, a man's sock that is partway done. So I knit through the heel flap and the gusset. I think I just completed the gusset on this one as well. I may throw both of these in my bag so that it will be unlikely that I will run into trouble again if I got to the toe on that and couldn't do that at work for whatever reason. I could pull this one out and work on this. These are going to be either for my father or perhaps my mom's boyfriend. I haven't decided which of them will get this man sock, but the yarn I'm using for this is just some opal. I think it's one of the rainforest colorways. I don't know if I have, do I? No, I don't even have the tag for this. But yeah, opal is always so great, especially for men's socks. It's just such hard wearing yarn. It just holds up so well. So there's that I worked on in the last little bit. And then there is one other pair of socks that has had some work. These again are socks I started earlier this year. Excuse me, I keep licking my lips. I didn't even put any lipstick on today. My lips are quite chapped. Since it's snowing a bit and it's dry, and I tend to get chapped lips, and lipstick and stuff actually kind of makes it worse because then I lick the lipstick off. Don't ask, but I'm trying not to lick my lips and let them heal up a little bit. So yeah, this is another pair of socks that I started in the summer and I hadn't quite I was halfway through one sock. I think I might have been on the heel flap when I picked these up about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. It's another Cookie A pattern. This is the Istanbul pattern. I worked on these when we did our Cookie A cal in the summer. And so I showed these off on the podcast then. And I got partway through the leg and like I said, I think maybe through the heel flap and into the beginning of the gusset, and then I worked on some other stuff, and this didn't get any more love, and so I picked these up. These are again gonna be another Christmas present. I finished the first sock of that, and I made some good headway into the leg of the second sock. So yeah, this is not let me talk about the yarn first. The yarn, I love this yarn actually. I love the colors of it. It's this is Flock Fiber Studios. They're a local dyer here in Calgary, and this is what is this one called? The Take a Hike sock is the base, and it's an 80-20 superwash merino, 20% nylon, and the colorway is Antique Shop, and it's just beautiful. Just kind of a neutral beige, almost like a natural pale beigey natural sheep color, although I think this is actually a dye, probably from a white yarn, but that's what the color reminds me of, is very much a natural pale brown sheep color with little pops of black and darker brown and bronze in it. And as you can see how it knits up, it's just super pretty. Isn't that lovely? Now this pattern, I wanted to just touch on this for a few minutes. Unlike the other cookie socks I was talking about, this pattern this would take me a little bit longer. I suspect this may be why I put it down to begin with in the summer. It is not an intuitive lace pattern, I have to say. I have to look at this pattern for every single row. It's simple in the fact that it's just basically yarn overs and increases and decreases. But it's like a 15 row repeat of a chart. I think it's about 15 rows, maybe something like that, 16 rows. And I never know what to do on the next row without gluing my eyes to the chart to follow it. So it's slower going because like I said, I have to look at the chart every single row to see what I'm doing on it. The blessing is the chart's only on the front all the way through. The back of the sock and the leg is just 2x2 ribbing, and then obviously stockinette in the foot. But they're a bit slower going. But I think I'm basically almost through. I'm just measuring here one against the other. So I'm only a few rows actually from, I would say maybe I'm a dozen, maybe one more chart repeat, I don't know, but to putting in the heel on the second sock. And these are going to be also a Christmas present, I think, for my, I was going to say my sister-in-law, but she's not actually, she's my sister's sister-in-law. Large extended family that all get together for Christmas, but she is the wife of my brother-in-law. It's my sister's husband's got an identical twin brother, and they're very close, being identical twins, and they do kind of everything together. So he and his wife usually join us for Christmas dinner. She's lovely and known them for many years. My sister and her husband actually have known each other since he was 8 and she was 5 when they met. So she's known him and his identical twin brother since she was 5 years old, which I think is pretty cool. So yeah, our family has known all their family for a long time, and everybody's pretty close, and we all do Christmas together. So these will be for Sandra, who is his wife, Kevin's wife, who is my sister's sister-in-law. How confusing is that? And you probably don't even care, but in case you do, there you go. So yeah, that's, as I said, that's the Istanbul socks by Cookie A, Flock Fiber Studio. I think I started those, like I said, in June, and those should be done quickly. And then another whip that I also knit on this at work for a day or two. This is actually, it's a hat. And this is like my favorite hat pattern, I think, or one of my very favorite hat patterns. I've knit this hat a lot. This is the Winds Chief by Stephen West. One year I knit this pattern for my father, my husband, my brother-in-law and his twin brother, and somebody else. I think I knit like 5 of these for Christmas one year. So my one of my workmates, the guy I share an office with at work, he was bemoaning that he had lost his favorite hat the other day, and not even as a hint, he was just, it had snowed, it was getting cold, it was our first big snowstorm, cold snap, and he was saying how it was a drag that he had lost his favorite hat, and he only had a winter hat that he kind of thought was goofy, and he's completely bald, he shaves his head, so, you know, cold weather is pretty important to have a hat. And so I just said that I would knit him a hat, which he got very excited about. He's a great guy. We joke all the time, and we share an office, and we call each other, I call him my work husband, and he calls me his work wife, and we have a great relationship. So I said, oh, Johnny, I can knit you a hat. And he said, really? You would do that? And I said, oh, really, I will do that. I mean, a hat takes no time, particularly this pattern, which I've knit so many times. This is like a couple hours worth of work, about halfway through the hat, maybe a third of the way through the hat. It's knit out of some Malabrigo Rios. The colorway, isn't that pretty? It's called Glitter. And it's just a sort of slightly variegated caramel brown. All the ones that I did for Christmas a few years ago were all out of Malabrigo Rios. This is a great yarn. And I think this was a leftover yarn. I bought a bunch of colors of that to do those hats that year. And I bought more than I needed and didn't quite use them all. So I think this was one that was left over. I do highly recommend this if you're looking for a quick to knit up, simple, but stylish looking men's, as we call them in Canada, toque. I know that if you're American, that's not a word, or from anywhere else in the world. Toque is a very Canadian, French-Canadian word, I do believe, but it just means a wool cap. And it's knit on you knit the brim on a 4mm needle, and then you go up to a 4.5mm for the rest of the hat. And it's just, this is slip stitch, or twisted stitch single ribbing. 1 by 1, yes, it's all 1 by 1 ribbing and twisted stitch on the knit side, down there, and then that panel carries up and it sort of slants and then decreases, and all the rest is just stockinette. This is such great yarn. The Rios is such great yarn for this particular pattern. On a 4.5mm, it makes quite a nice dense gauge, which means that it's going to be a reasonably warm hat and keep out the wind reasonably well. So I suspect I may work on this over the next day or two and try and get it to him in the next couple of days. Just get that done and out of the way. It's not a Christmas present or anything. So yeah, that's that. And then the last two things that I have done some work on, and I'll be showing you these, but I probably won't show you them again for a while because I did a bunch of work on 2 sweater projects I'm working on, but then I put them aside again now and probably won't knit on them again until after I get my Christmas presents done, I think. Although who knows? I never know at what point I'm going to want to knit what. Being that slutty knitter that I am, I just be all different tastes all the time. But I put some more work on my Wake cardigan. I showed this, I believe I showed this on the last episode. I was adding some more work. I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of detail about this because I talked about it on the last episode. I just want to show you how much more I did since I showed it off. I'm almost up to, so this is where I was when I showed it on the podcast a couple weeks ago. I was there and I've done all the rest of that. This is the front of the cardigan. I think about 2 inches from where I start, 2 or 3 inches from where I start shaping for the sleeve holes. So that was exciting. I did a bunch of work. This is a fun project. I mean, there's this lovely cable, horseshoe cable, I think this is. It goes up the sides on either side, but all the rest of it is just stockinette back and forth. It's a very pleasant pattern. I've talked about the yarn before, which is, I'm not even going to be able to remember. It's in my last episode, and it'll be in the show notes what the yarn is. But it's a lovely woolen spun beaver slide dry goods. That's what it is. Very pleasant to knit with. So I did some more on that, and I am going to get back onto that with some vigor as soon as I've knocked off a few more Christmas presents. And then the last thing, this is a gift knit as well, although there's no deadline on this. It'd be great if I could get it done by Christmas, but I suspect actually early in the new year, is the sweater that I'm knitting for, and again, one of my workmates, one of the actors who works on, again, my company, not only is it that I work for now, which is called One Yellow Rabbit. Funny name, I know. Not only is it a creation-based theater, but they're an ensemble-based theater, so they have a small number of actors who have been with that company right since the beginning. So for 30 plus years, maybe 35 years. And so I've worked with Denise on and off on other projects and stuff. I've known her for a long time, and but she's somebody I work with great regularity within the company. As she's an artist, she's a dancer and an actor. And I've talked about her before on this podcast. I've knit her other things. She's a wonderful seamstress. She sews a lot of her own clothes. She comes to work often in these wonderful things that you all admire, and she'll say, yeah, I made this. And she's really good at engineering patterns now. She's got to the point, she's been sewing all her life, and so she's gotten to the point where she'll often take a piece of clothing that she really likes, and she will figure out how to, that she a store-bought piece of clothing, and she'll figure out how to kind of make a pattern from it and make another one like it. She bought a pair of really nice looking sort of fitted, excuse me, I shouldn't be drinking Diet Coke while I'm podcasting. That's terrible. She bought, it's a really nice pair of overalls, but they're very stylish looking and quite fitted. And I said she's been a dancer all her life, has a beautiful dancer's body and can wear all kinds of things like that. And they're really cute. And she bought these overalls because she's going to make herself some others, using that original pair kind of as the inspiration for the pattern. So she made me a beautiful top in the spring. She brought in a shirt one day and said, look, I sewed you a shirt. And which was super sweet. And I've knit a few things for her before. And again, she's someone who's super, super appreciative and wears hand knits with love and very proudly tells people if they admire the hat or the scarf or whatever it is that I made her that she's wearing, that I made them for her and stuff. So I am knitting her a sweater. And a sweater, generally when I knit for other people, other than my husband, I stick to small projects. I stick to hats or mitts or socks. Denise is one of the very, very few people I know who I would actually spend the time to make a sweater for. But it's nice because we picked out the pattern together, we picked out the yarn together, and we agreed when I started on this, which was about 9 months ago, I think, or 10 months ago that I started on this. But we agreed that there was no deadline on it, that I would finish it when I finished it. So, but I made some really good headway. It's been a few months since I showed it off on the podcast. The last time I showed it off, I was here where this progress keeper is. And I have knit from this progress keeper all of that. It's going to be hard to kind of show this to you, but you can see how much I've done on it. It's all stockinette at the moment. It's super, super easy. It's a cardigan. The pattern is called the Yellow Wall Cardigan by Judith Bryan. I'm knitting it out of Woolmiza Pure. These lights are making it actually a little bit brighter and pinkier looking than it really is. That's a truer kind of color. It's a beautiful deep burgundy. And it's got this sort of tall drapey collar. So like the shoulder start here. So all of this is this collar that buttons up and sort of slouches around your neck, almost like a cowl collar, I guess I would call it. And then I've obviously separated for the sleeves, and I'm about over half anyway of the way through the body. I just got to a place where you start some increases and decreases for a little bit of body shaping. As I said, it's the Yellow Wall Cardigan. I am knitting it predominantly out of the Woolmiza. I'm doing the Lazy Man's version of alternating skeins, which is that I knit with one skein for a while, and then when I get closer to the end of the skein, then I stripe in the second skein. And the colors are close enough you don't notice that way. So it's like it's got a little fade section between one skein and the other, rather than alternating the whole way through the whole body, which I could have done, but like I said, I'm just lazy. So this is my second skein. Woolmiza is great for the fact that it's Woolmiza Pure, which is our 100% merino fingering, and they come in 150 gram skeins, so that's always really nice too. So I'm pretty positive I will get through the whole body on this second skein, and then probably a third one for the sleeves, and I'll be done. And I'm also adding in some black accent around the bottom. There'll be black and around the sleeves. The pattern also has extra long sleeves that sort of slouch around the wrist the same way that the collar does. It's a really cute kind of loose, relaxed fitting kind of sweater, which I think will suit Denise very well. And yeah, so I'm enjoying that. It's really funny knitting on, if you've never knit with Woolmiza before, which you may never even have heard of Woolmiza. It's a German yarn. Her colors are incredible. This was my first ever serious addiction to indie dyed yarn, was Volmisa. For a while there, it was, hard to get. You had to be right on the site when the update went up. And being in Germany, her updates were very often happened late at night. And there were quite a few times where, like lots of nights, where I would stay up till like 2 a.m. refreshing the website to be right there when the updates came up, and try to scramble to get some yarn. It's not quite as hard to get anymore as it used to be. In fact, there's a store here in Calgary that one of our local yarn stores, The Loop, carries Volmisa in the store, which is awesome. And the Loop EU carries it online as well. And I don't think it's quite as hard to get from her website anymore. But I was so in love with her colors, because I had never seen yarn a dyer that got the depth and saturation and intensity of the kind of colors she gets. She does a lot of variegated colors, and then she does some of these really beautiful tonals as well. And but it's an interesting yarn. I think it's a 4-ply. It's thin. It's thinner, and it's not bouncy. It's not the way we often expect merino yarn to be, with a real bounce to it. There's not a ton of bounce. It almost feels like cotton a bit when you knit it. It's got that slightly stiffer, and I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's just the base. I suspect it may be something to do with the saturation of the dye. I don't know, but it is an interesting yarn. It doesn't look as, I hold this up close, and this is on the. It's harder to make the stitches look as smooth and even in stockinette. You can sort of see that. As it is with a plumper yarn, which will fill in those spots while you're knitting and make your knitting look even. I find with Volmisa, while I'm knitting it, my knitting never looks as even and consistent as it does with some other yarns. But when you wash it, it blooms up quite nicely. So, like, this is my swatch. And it's wrinkled from being in my bag, but other than that, it really has, the yarn looks much nicer once you give it a good bath and a little block. So yeah, and there will be buttons all down the front of the cardigan. These are just little black buttons I got, which will look nice with the black accent yarn. So yeah, quite a bit of work got done on that over a few nights of hanging out with my husband and watching some television stuff. Again, I had to put this down so that I could concentrate on my Christmas knitting, but I keep trying to pick that up every, now that I picked it up again for good about a few months ago. I picked it up just before I went out to Knit City and worked on it a bit, and I picked it up again, and I want to keep it, I'm keeping it out and visible to me so that I can keep working on it, hopefully while I, in between other projects, and get it done. I would really like to get it to her by the end of January at the latest, which is when we finish the show we're doing right now. So that is all of my polygamous knitting to show you today. And I think that's it. I don't really have anything else. I was going to talk a bit on a topic, but then I looked at how much knitting I had to show you and realized that no, there probably wouldn't be time to talk on a topic. But so I'll save that for another podcast where I don't have quite as much knitting content to show you. I will mention, though, speaking of topics, that if you have anything that you would like me to talk about, things that you would like to see more of on the podcast, or topics you would like me to talk about, or things you would like me to talk less about, because that could always be possible too. But if you have any of that kind of feedback, please do pass it on to me. I'm always eager to hear what people think and what ideas they might have of how I might do things differently or better, or include some other things than what I could think to include all on my own. So I would love your feedback. You could comment either right down below here on YouTube. I see all those comments, or you could comment in the Ravelry group, in the thread that I will post with the show notes that I will post for this episode. So that's all for today. I again want to thank you for spending a little time with me, and until I talk to you next time, happy knitting.